Welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast presented by Physiogrowth. We're your hosts, Brian, who scaled a PT practice from the trunk of his car to 6 locations, and Owen, who helped lead an 8-figure exit and now runs a cash-based PT practice. This show is real conversations from owners actively building with what's working right now. All right, and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. We are going to be talking today about this kind of area of revenue, and revenue is really the only way we can make it applicable to everybody. But this area of revenue that physical therapy businesses find themselves in and owners find themselves in, where they've got a real business, right? They're making money, but they're doing everything. And they know, sometime I got to get an employee. I have too many patients, right? Or, I gotta figure out, maybe do I want a location, going from mobile to a location? Essentially, I call it the big boy zone or the big girl zone, where you basically have to make big boy and big girl decisions about, do I want this to be an asset that I grow over a long period of time? How do I do that? So with me, as always, is Brian Wolf. He has 6 clinics that he runs directly. He's part of a group that has 25, 6, 7 clinics across the country, one of those. So he has not only started from nothing and done it, but he's also seen different companies acquiring different companies. In my background, I have also done this when I was working for an insurance-based company, where we would acquire clinics, we would grow clinics from nothing. And there are certain benchmarks that we think we wanted to talk about today, that if you're struggling with this, that you can hopefully kind of say, oh, okay, that sounds like me. So, Brian, let's hit us with some good ones. What are some things that you said, either when you were doing it or now as you are advising other business owners, possibly thinking about growing different clinics in your realm? What are some of those benchmarks that an owner might want to be thinking, okay, that's where I really got to put on my big boy or big girl pants?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would say, and we've talked about this on a regular basis, is what is your goal for your practice, right? Is it multiple locations? Is it one location that's just absolutely cranking? Like what is it that you're looking for? Is it just a solo thing, right? That you're just doing? I think, and I'm a big believer in this first before we start getting to tactical money and advice and how to do that. Because I would also say, like, I'm a big believer in making sure that you're doing what you love to do as well. So some people don't love managing other people. And I would say that if you find very quickly that when you're managing other people, you friggin' hate it, like, to ultimately grow past you is probably not what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
For those people, I put up a post today about um the whitewashing effect. There's a lot of people who are like, look at my amazing life as a cash PT. I think it happens a lot in cash PT. That's why I'm making fun of
Mm.
it. But look at my amazing life. If you're whitewashing that shit, there's also some stuff you gotta look through that. There's nothing that's stress free. There's nothing that ultimately, when we say these numbers, there's nothing about them where it's like, oh my God, that's how much money I could be making. Because the reality is, whenever people are thinking about starting their own business or doing that stuff, it's generally because they want to make more money. And the reality of the situation is, when we talk about these different things, as we start to grow here, you're not making more money while you do
Yeah.
this, right? Like, that's the reality of the
That
situation.
is an
Because
important caveat. Yeah,
very important caveat,
I think it's important too, because look at me, right? I started a cash-based business out of the back of my car, right? And now I'm like, look, I've managed, I had 40 people under me. I liked it. It was good at it. Um, but I got 2 kids, right? They're in that fun part where they still want to hang out with dad. So yeah, I might do more just solo company for another year or two before I start kicking in the gears, and knowing what you've gone through,
yeah, for sure.
right? Of, yeah, you're living a pretty Spartan life there as you're trying to build out,
For
something
sure.
that eventually will be a huge asset that you can help your community with and you can
Yeah.
change the game with. But like, it's not fun the first few
No,
years.
exactly. That's probably the best way to describe it. The road that I would tell you is, I love the Alex Hormozi quote, right? It's like, the first 10 years are usually the eat shit phase.
Yeah.
So give it to that point. So I always think it's funny when, like, I see people who've been in business for themselves for less than a year being like, guys, people people don't realize you have to go to work sick when you work for yourself, otherwise you make no money. Or some people
Yeah.
don't realize, like, when you go on vacation, like, this freedom. And I'm like, you fucking ding dongs. Like it just
Take a picture
again,
of themselves with a laptop at a coffee shop on like a Saturday, like grind it,
yes.
bro.
Grinding just it's like listen, they don't even know, like I said, I think people need I just want to bring real information. This is a lot of whitewashing going on here. Like you are gonna have to grind for a while. It's not,
Oh yeah.
we work with some owners that are like, they've been in practice and in business for themselves doing stuff for a while, and the thing they ask us all the time is like, well, what about this and blah blah blah, and then we're sitting here giving them real truths and real tactical advice.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times this is like, man, it's just so hard to do this stuff. It's like I get it, I
Yeah.
get it. Like because what ends up happening is once you start, committing to very specific expenses, particularly a lease, like a real big boy lease, not like Lone was talking about, not a
Hmm.
sublease, a big boy
Yep.
lease with a landlord. It's
Hmm.
5 to 10 years.
You got to build it out.
When shit goes sideways, guess whose pocket it comes out of, right?
Yeah.
It's yours. So
Well, I think the biggest thing too is what you were just saying, just to piggyback off of that, is when can I give up some of the clinical responsibilities, right?
nice.
And honestly, people look at us with when we have like three heads, when we're just like, I don't know, when you have like a entrepreneur, when you have a management structure of like 3 to 4 people who can confidently lead
Minimum.
clinics, right? Where and you have those clinics built out, like other than that, you're going to be treating patients, man. And I
Yeah.
think this is the zone, right? This is the zone where maybe you have a location, maybe you have one or two therapists, and you're like, oh yeah, I think I can probably back off and work on the business a little bit. And then you do that, and then you're like, well, crap, our revenue's down, right? And you haven't built out that leadership structure. You don't have enough revenue to create a leadership structure. So that's where I think like the grind really comes in is right before that. You're like, oh, this is cool. I got a location. We're making
Totally.
money. And then someone puts in their notice. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure, for sure. So let's go through some benchmarks that I think are realistic for most people, right?
Okay.
And
Hit
I'm
me
gonna
with them.
ballpark this. They're all different. I'm gonna go based
Cost of
off
living
of
changes, all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm also gonna go off of some other things you can and can't do. I should say can't do, but more can do. So like these are benchmarks in my mind. I think that any solo physical therapist really seems to be able to get to about 300K,
Mhm.
and that's not making it. That means gross revenue. So that means the
Gross.
amount
Yeah.
of money that you can generate on your own. Your eyeballs might be bleeding a little bit. You might even be able to sneak in like some 350s and 400s, but I find that most solopreneurs seem to tap out right around there, right around like 300 to 400. And then
Yeah.
and then I'll walk you through just some tactical math. So if there's some fucking jabroni out here who says, "Hey, but I charge $500 an hour." All right, bro. Like let's
Yeah.
it just seems to be a ballpark. Because if I do, let's call it 300 an hour, 300 or 300. Say
Now keep in
300.
mind, Phoenix, there's very few people charging 300. So, and
Yeah,
Phoenix is considered a high cost of
exactly.
living area. And we would be like two something. So 300,
Yeah,
I think would be on the high mark when you're talking about
yeah.
300K per
Well,
year.
well, exactly. Because if I think of 300K per year, that means if you're taking, let's call it 2 weeks vacation, you're absolutely
Yeah.
hustling,
You're
right?
slam full the whole
You're
other
so
time.
yeah, that's 6K weeks. So
Yeah.
6K weeks, say that's, Owen talked about having kids, so you want to spend some time.
Yeah.
Say you're doing 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Maybe let's call let's
56K
go
weeks. That's
let's call
300,000.
five
Yeah.
five a week. Yeah, you're talking about, $1,000 days. Well,
Hmm.
$1,000 days, divided by, let's call it, what do you charge Noah? 175, 200,
Yeah.
right? Some
Yeah.
of that,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
Right?
lower, man, because I just
Yeah.
started. Yeah.
Well, no, but even that, I mean, I think 175 is a big nut for most people,
Yeah.
right? Per session, you're talking about 6 sessions a day,
Yeah.
6.2.
Yeah.
So if you're doing 175 to 200, and you got packages that are 200 or 10% discounted, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about 6 patients a day, 100% full for 50 weeks at
It's
5.5 days. Like, so
a
you see
lot
what
of
I'm saying?
driving.
Like, it's a lot of driving. So like I said, 300 seems to be around where I see people, right?
For me, if you were to take my structure and say, okay, eyes bleed like six, because for me it would be six a day, right? Like that would be I
Yeah.
wouldn't be picking up my kids, wouldn't be dropping them off. Maybe I could do one of the two.
Yeah.
And then like probably taking some people on Saturdays,
Yep.
right?
And
Um,
my experience, dude, is most people, so to the jabronis that are going to say, "Hey, well, I charge 250, I'm going to charge 300." Yeah, but then what I find happens is there's not as many of those people who want to pay that. So therefore you don't end up hitting, five, six patients, 6.2, 7 patients a day. So what ends up
Yeah.
happening is if you look at it from the other side, what ends up happening is you just can't stay full. Like I said,
Seasonality
that
kills those people. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So like I just think like again, full transparency, like Owen knows this, like there's people I've charged $800 to go to like it's
Mhm.
not about the money, it's just that there's not as many people. It's like a bell curve. Like
Yeah.
300,000 just seems to be the place where most people seem to get stuck, right? Is
Yeah.
the first
I
one.
agree.
Now, that is where, in theory, I've talked about this on this podcast and multiple times. I believe that most people should be involved in the location by this point
Mhm.
because, in essence, probably somewhere between 200 and 300K, there needs to be a location that you're driving people to so that you can get because now what you're doing is you're getting your life back. Because
Mhm.
if I can stack 6 hour sessions at 175 together, ultimately that means it's a 6 hour workday. Now, obviously, that's if you can keep them all compressed. That's very rare. So what ends up happening is it ends up being an 8, 9, 10 hour workday because you might be seeing somebody at 7 a.m. and somebody at 5 p.m., right, or something like that before and after work. So
Yeah.
ultimately, the first step around 200 to 300K is to start looking for that location. I
Yeah,
would tell,
I just did the quick math by the way.
yeah,
6 patients a day versus 8 patients a day at 175. Difference of $400 per day,
yeah,
350 per day, right? So that is
20%. I mean,
again, if
if you're,
you're that full, okay, do you get six? Maybe some people don't want to drive, but like you have strategies to kind of change that
yeah,
where you charge them more to go to their house, right?
yeah.
Um, but a location allows you to see more people.
Yeah, and the quick
Right.
math there is say you went from 6 to 8, it's 25% increase. So if I
Yeah.
just took 300K, I know based off the conversation I just had, you're already going to be flirting with 400K just by doing that.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what happens is it allows you to grow into that. Now, the initial jump can be concerning. I have personally found the sweet spot for most people. I would tell people try not to let the rent get over 6K per month if
Per month.
possible, right? Try not to let it get over that. Now, that being said, we have places in Beverly Hills, California, and
Yeah.
Hollywood. I got places in Fairfield, Connecticut, right? I promise you, we pay more than that in more of those places. So, by the way, if
Well, and those
you
are big clinics. You're not talking about somebody who's just coming
well,
up. Like I looked around here, nicest places in Phoenix, and I mean for 1,500 square foot, it's like I'd probably pay 40, 50K a year, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's what, like
And
four
that's let
thousand a month?
yeah, way less than that, right? So like
Yeah.
again, I would tell Owen like I just see the numbers because now what happens from an expense perspective, every again 5 to 6K in most places, including our areas, can get you into a place where you can get like 2 to 3,000 square feet. And so
Yeah.
I think that to go with the 1,000 square feet, even 1,500, the problem is it's a little small.
Yeah.
So what ends up
If you
happening
grow
is,
and
yeah,
you
if you
sign a
grow.
long lease.
Yes, exactly. So that's the problem, to Owen's point. Like, so
Okay.
say you sign a 5 year lease, you're gonna outgrow that space to a certain amount. Like, what
So
we have somebody that we coach, right? And the biggest thing she says is, if I have three or four physical therapists, we're kind of bumping into each other. Well,
yeah.
at that point, you really want to be able to get to like five because
Yeah.
now, again, like think about if I can get to five and I can keep it under 6K, this is when this math really starts getting big fast. And allows you to pay everybody more money, the therapist, make their lives better, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of the thought process that I would say, if you're thinking about these tactical moments, is like I think that we now and insurance is a whole different game, obviously,
So
because
that's
now
what I want to get. That's what
yeah,
I
go ahead.
want to get pick your mind on because you have
Mhm.
half of your revenue ballpark. I don't know the exact numbers,
Yeah,
but half of your revenue coming from fitness and cash services, half of it coming from insurance based
yeah,
PT, right? Or there's a split way more than what most practices have in the country, right? Most practices are maybe 10% of cash, right?
yeah.
Um,
It's more than 10%, but it's less than half.
yeah, so whatever. It's
If I were
more
to
than most.
ballpark it for you,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but this is the interesting thing. So you would say, don't get employees first if you're mobile, go to a location. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast, so I'm not going to ask you to break that down. Um, but then what, like the benefits of the size of the location, because I'm making this decision now. I got to sign a 7 year
Yeah.
lease or 4 year, whatever it is, right? Like in your head, should you have some idea? Maybe, hey, I'm okay with taking insurance. Like, I want to have 5 locations because that probably would make me say, okay, I'm biting the bullet a little bit more in getting a 4,000 square foot location as opposed to, nope, I'm not taking insurance. And then I'd be more comfortable with like a 2,000 square foot location because the growth is going to be slower.
I think it goes back to now is when you really have to figure out, like, this is the way I would describe why I'm saying this. This is where you really have to figure out what's your vision for what you want this business to look like. Does that make
I think
sense?
that's what most people miss.
1000%. And you and I were talking about some people the other day who are marketing to populations that they don't want to treat. And that's a
Yep.
huge mistake. And I said the same thing to you in the podcast. I was like, the reality of why that happens is it's a desperation. Again, here's that whitewashing. Check out all these great patients I treat and how awesome they are. But the reality is then these other patients are actually what pay the bills. And so the reality of what occurs is you want to think about how you want to go in what direction. Like, for instance, in my opinion, if you are like, I don't want to ever deal with insurance, the sacrifice that you're making is you're probably not going to see nearly as many ACLs as you'd like,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Your
And,
post-surgical is, yeah, good luck.
exactly, you're not going to see the post surge. And like for those people that point out some random person who's like, that's the ACL specialist who does that. Okay,
Cool.
I bet there is somebody out there. In fact, again, look, I've worked in professional sports for years. I bet I could probably niche into that, and I could probably be like, come see me after the first 3 months of your ACL surgery, and I'll do this incredible job, right? And I will catch
Yep.
some people, and I can do that. I'm just telling you, it's a harder road. So, in essence, what I have found, and I've said this with cash physical therapy, is there's multiple buckets. I think cash physical therapy in particular, most of it is competing with massage therapy and personal trainers. So if
Yep.
you think about that in those people, these are the people that generally will hire us over personal trainers and massage therapists because of our skill set and knowledge. So you're looking for people who value that our brains over those other people.
Great
Now,
for geriatrics, great for neuro, people who want to be in the home. They've saved up their whole life. They have money that they can spend off if they want to.
yeah,
Now the whole Medicare opting in, opting out thing that could complicate that as a massive business model. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I know in my world, like in the cash PT world today, getting a young athlete who's not whose parents aren't independently wealthy, real challenge.
for sure.
Real challenge. They
Because
want 2 or 3 sessions. They want the expert to know what's going on. But then when you say, well, look, to actually get this better, it takes 2 times a week for 6 weeks. Like, you have this. Like, we have to do it. And then they're like, okay, so who's the best in town? Outside
yeah,
of you that takes insurance. Like, shit.
for sure, for sure. And what ends up happening is in that scenario, and that's just the common complaint we see. They're like, we want more like rehab type patients. And I'm like, but that's not really what Cash PT is going to be disrupting, is the
No,
reality. Now,
no.
that being said, can you see people who are rehab? Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Right? There's strategies for that, and you can do it, but it's just not as long-term consistent, really.
yeah.
So to go back to that, if your dream practice is like, I want to see rehab-based patients all the time, I want to have commitments and work with doctors, I want to, work with community events, I want to see all these different cool people and not really have to worry about, oh, this person's going to reject me because they can't pay for my services. I would suggest going in the insurance realm because I
Mhm.
do think that it can build and scale better, right? On the flip side, say somebody's doing more cash-based stuff, right? Because I've seen people who are in New York City and Los Angeles, again, some of the wealthier places like the Northeast and the Southwest, right? Like, get it, I get that, right? But at the end of the day, not everybody's like that. If you're in Phoenix, right? Like what I was
Mhm.
talking about. So the reality of these practices and what we're talking about is as you're kind of building here, the thinking would be to drive it back into the clinic and then think about what the next 7 to 10 years look like and what you want your dream practice to look like and start building in that direction. And
Yeah.
so I just think the key metric is trying to keep it around the rent around 5K or 6K, but no more than that,
Yeah.
because I think all those systems can operate really nicely in there. Because again, if you get into the 9 and 10Ks and 13Ks in rent, which we've done that before, you can be strangled fast. And now what ends up happening is you're absolutely depending on, can I get more people than just me? Because and the reason I bring it up is let's do the math on that. So let's call $9,000. So $9,000 times 12, that's $108,000. So say I'm grinding my eyeballs out and I'm doing 400K. All right, cool. That means then I'm netting 300 in theory, even though you know this, like you got to build out a space, you got to build out. So there's other aspects of that you got to heat that space. Like we pay thousands and thousands of dollars for just heat in the winter, right? For what we do, different upkeep of different things. There's painting jobs, there's plumbing, there's different bathroom things, there's supply. So there's just all these hidden costs. Admin people at that point, you're wanting admin people. You probably wanted admin people probably in that 200, 300 person as well. So they're going to want to make 60K, right? At a minimum. So you just start adding up expenses quickly. The space now, if you have a second physical therapist, you also have to realize that physical therapist isn't going to want to bleed out their eyeballs like you do. So
Yep.
instantly, you got to think like, so their productivity is just going to be less than yours, right? And again, like 100% productivity in those people like doesn't exist, and they're already turned off for it. And in a hiring shortage right now, where it's really difficult to hire a physical therapist, you got to be paying attention, not tone deaf to that. So
Yeah.
again, like let's now go the other direction. So again, and I'm also doing just 2 weeks vacation. Most physical therapists are like, I want 10 weeks vacation or some shit like that. Right? Right? Remember we have somebody who's like they hired a PT, they wanted the whole summer off. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's just not people are asking for ludicrous shit. Now let's call it 2 weeks vacation. So 2 weeks vacation. Let's really you know what? Let's really call it 4 weeks because people get sick. So 48 times 40, right? That's 100. That's 1,900 hours essentially that a person's going to work for you. So the 1,900 hours, if you are going to say, let's call it 80% to zero point 0.8, right? Times, let's call it 180-ish because we talked about that, 180. If they were 80% productive during that time, they're capping at 275K. Again, so when you think about
For
those
revenue for
numbers
the business.
for revenue for the business,
Got it.
right? Now, keep in mind, you got to pay them. So when people are like, oh, we'll pay these salaries of 150 to 170K for these cash-based practices, that means you're taking 100K. So if
Yeah.
you're struggling, right, to make ends meet in your space, right, without another therapist, I won't put it at the top of this. What happens if they leave? You do not want to be in that position. You want to be able to function with just you and making the money that you need to make to be
Hmm.
happy. And I use
Yeah.
that word very specifically, to be happy. If you want to be making 150K a year, it's very doable. If you want to be making 100K a year, it's very doable. However, I do not think that it's done within 40 hours. That's just my take. I've posted all over the place, and most people agree with me.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to hiring, like that's how I would look to hire. And you just try and stack those hires along with market, and then it slowly backs up from there. And that's in
Yeah.
the cash-based world. In the insurance-based world, where our reimbursement rate's around $90 a session, which is great. We see 12 patients per therapist per day, right? Which is very manageable, and that's be
Now,
100%
$90 a
full.
session, but that's averaging because you guys do 40-minute treatments one
Hmm.
on one.
Yeah.
So for in my old business, we would do like 60-minute treatments and we would get 90,
Yeah.
right? So we get way less per minute, right, than you guys would. And I think that's something to take into account too when you're saying, okay, that one person would make 270,000 in a cash base. Okay, like a reimbursement rate is not the same as cost of living. So you got to take that into account when you're saying, okay, I want a $5,000 space, but if I'm in Arizona and for an hour I get 90 minutes and then Brian gets for an hour because you're not, but let's do the math out and you do 120 for an hour, right?
Yeah.
Then okay, that's different too, right? So these are the things I think that are it's very unique, right? And this is why we have the mentorship group, so we can kind of run through these
Yeah.
numbers with you and say, okay, in your area, what's your average this? What's your cost for this, and this? Okay, in 2 years, you should probably be thinking about this,
Yeah.
right?
I think,
Uh,
and I
it's
think with
very
it,
specific, but we're doing very general here.
yeah. Well, and again, I'm talking about a cash-based clinic that essentially the person's amazing at sales, amazing at marketing themselves. Like there's so much other stuff that goes around in it. And I just
Yeah.
think in general, like like we're like if people are listening to this podcast, like I said, remember the PSA I said in the beginning of this. If they're like, wow, that's a lot of money. That's crazy. I want to take all that. You don't take all that because there's expenses.
Hmm.
You know, There are business expenses. There are CRM systems. There's by the way, we haven't even talked about documentation systems or billing or any of that shit. Like
Yeah.
in cash base, I don't care.
5% off the top. Yeah.
People are always sticking their money in your fucking pocket, man. Like that's just the
Yeah.
reality of how it goes. So you're losing lots of other By the way, taxes. Uncle Sam. We didn't even talk about Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam's come for your ass. 33%, baby. You know, the first third of the year, you're working for no, for the IRS, right?
Yep.
So the reality of the situation is when you think about um, when you think about that as a whole, that to me is a big piece of this. So I look at in general, like for us, most of our PTs, you know, like we talked about on the podcast, like we pay them more than half of what they bring in, right? Because that's what the market's demanding. But
Yeah.
that's not a great business model long term. But again, we make money on some other contracts. That's the hybrid idea of it. We can subsidize with other cash based stuff we're doing. So the reality of what's really suppressing salaries, and again, I wish all PT salaries would double if insurance reimbursements double. That's
Yeah.
it. If
Wouldn't it be great?
it'd be
Yeah.
great. And then all of a sudden, like, but realize this, guys. If it doubled and then your PT salary doubled, like in theory, PTs would be making more money all over the place. But what would end up happening is expenses would also go up too, right? There'd be other
Yeah.
expenses that go up. I think that's the part that's tricky. So it's just a matter of trying to figure out how can we sustainably build a model in physical therapy practices where everybody can make more money. And to me, the hybrid model works really well to scale and grow to actually create these assets that work really well. However, they also take forever because you got to well, forever, but they take that 10-year each shit phase because you got to go through these steps of learning how to market new people. Like, for Owen, it's been 2 years now, and Owen is now really starting to hit his stride with getting patients pretty regularly. But it took 2 years just to get the fucking ball rolling, right? It's
Yeah.
just Owen. So now think about the process of onboarding new people. And then what we haven't talked about is then again, people leave. And we just had somebody who after 7 months their employee left and they're in a good situation, right? We have employees leave and come and go all the time because life happens. Someone moves to Boston, someone bought a house an hour and a half away and then thought the commute wouldn't be shit, like the fucking moron, right? Like there's so many that's happened twice, by the way. Like there's so much dumb shit that goes on because life is life.
Yeah.
People have kids. That's a real one. People have babies.
Yeah.
So there's just so many types of things. Like as you grow, it's kind of like if you're making more, it's the classic Jay-Z line. If you're making more money, you got more problems. So right, it's just that
Yeah.
classic example. So the reality is, how do you keep tactically growing over time? Well, it's tackling problems individual. But again, that's why I come back to circle this back and land this plane.
Wasn't that Biggie, by the way?
Maybe it was Biggie. You're right. Maybe it was Biggie. My bad. My
Oh
bad.
man.
My bad. I
It,
don't know.
it
I can't
was.
remember. We'll have to fact check that. My bad if
Us,
it's
us
not.
millennials who all
I
thought
know.
we were cool, knowing all the rap lyrics, and now
I
our
know.
kids look
I
like
know.
us like we're idiots.
Exactly. What a moron I already am. So in terms of like one of the things that I would just to fix it is to talk about is it's not like making more money will fix all these different issues. I think that when it comes to the aspect of, hey, I want to go and open up my own practice and build it as you start scaling and make more money, these problems also come about in different ways. Like honestly, one of the things that I was talking about with another business owner in a totally different sector, your your rates of getting sued skyrocket. So
Yeah,
like
figure
that's
you
something
are.
I didn't expect.
Yep.
I've been sued multiple times. So it's like
Yep.
it's over some horseshit,
Yep.
right? So it has nothing to do with the things that we've all learned in school. So from that perspective, so getting lawyers involved, like there's just all these different things with money that is important. So I think in general, you really want to think about what do I want my practice to look like that will make me happy. Start
Yeah.
there. A very philosophical question.
It's
And
true
then
though.
we start thinking about math and money.
Yeah.
And that's all business is math.
Well, because in those bad days when you are like, oh, this is due, and someone just put in their notice and all that, if you're not doing what you love, it's gonna be miserable, like
Yes,
just
exactly.
miserable. So if
Yeah.
we take anything away from being in that zone, when you're busy and your eyes are watering, you're like, oh man, I got so many people, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Just think about what is my worst day gonna look like, right?
Yeah,
And
for
is this
sure.
where I want to be on my worst day?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the key. It's like if you're like I'll tell you the biggest one. If you're listening and this resonates with you, I'm glad because I was talking with a guy, it's a physical therapist, who we were chatting about the mentorship group that we run and blah blah, talking through we set up a call and chatting through and he goes, I just think that if I opened up my own practice, I'd be miserable because I don't think I like treating patients enough to like love working for myself and then adding all that on. He's like, it's in my blood, it's in my family to be an entrepreneur. He's like, but I just don't think I'd be happy. And I was like, I think it's really great that you figured that out now.
Yeah.
Because the reality of I think a lot of people think, oh, if I go open up my own practice, then I'll be happy. And that's not how happiness works, guys. Happiness
Mhm.
works through what are the things that make me happy? And if I go do said things, that makes me happy. Just go do more of those things. Like, I'm
Mhm.
just a big believer in like, most of our all of our physical therapists make pretty decent money. If you're making 80, 85, 90, $95,000 and you're like not happy, and then you think
It's
that
a
making
spending problem.
110, yeah, you think making 110 is going to make you even more like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that jump is you're talking about $500 a week. Like it's
Yeah.
or a month. Like, and some people might say that's a game changer. I would agree, but it's not like I just think in general, you want to be more realistic with creating certain goals and how to grow and how to build certain things. And again, by the way, let's also review this math real quick because I think we can leave this episode to go a little longer as we talk about this.
That's fine. Yeah.
I also think let's think about this. So, say a physical therapist approaches me. We just went through some math and insurance. And I talk about like, say a physical therapist listen to this is like, well, okay, cool. So you're paying therapists a little more than they bill, like the half what they bill, right? Yeah, but say that person developed a program. So say within 40 hours, right? They're treating and say they're billing and they're making like 170K in billing with us, right? That we're getting reimbursed. And they're making like, 95K or something like that. Let's just use it something simple.
Yeah.
Say then they were like, "Hey Brian, I want to develop a program that's 2 times a week, right? That's a cash-based program that is like a Parkinson's driven big program." I'm just making shit up by the way. You could do anything with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Or let's use Owen. Let's use Owen as a big example. A golf program. A golf program where I got 8 people in it. I charge them all $50 a session, right? And as I charge them $50 a session, those 8 people twice a week, that's $100 a week. That's $800 a week. How can we work it out where we can build that business together? Now, what happens is I'm like, you help me build that business, right? You go do the marketing, you do the hustle work, you get those people one by one. I'll split it with you, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality of the situation is, say you go
It's
on
found
vacation.
money for you.
Well, it's found money for me in theory, but like I'm paying the rent, right?
Okay, but
You're gonna
yeah,
use the equipment. Hold on, but you're gonna use the equipment.
time
Yeah,
wise,
yeah.
it's found
Well,
money.
well, sort of. You're using the equipment, right? But on the other flip side is like, say you want to take off. Well, we also have to fulfill that, right? So what we'd do is we'd also staff it for when you're not there, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden it's a 52-week machine. So and you're still making money on that even though you're gone.
Uh-huh.
So now say you get, let's call it same thing. Let's say 75%. So we get 6 people in it regularly. So 6 people times 100, right? Times 52 weeks. That's $31,000. That's an extra 15K of revenue for 2 treatment slots.
Yeah.
So this is where I think the opportunity really is for a lot of physical
Oh
therapists
yeah.
because now, and that might say, oh, but 15 grand, Brian. Yeah, but that's on top of 95K,
Well, and
right?
I'm thinking this, right? Just whatever, right? If I say I have a golf
Yeah.
emporium for physical therapy and I got two other PTs, right?
Yeah.
One comes to me and she goes, I want to do golf. I want to do yoga for golf, aim it directly towards women. We're like,
Yeah.
fantastic, because
Yeah.
I would not sell that very well as
Yeah.
not a yoga person, not a woman, right?
Yeah.
And if she's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, great, cool, 50%, it's yours, right? She's going to be way more motivated, right? She's going to be able to do all that stuff. And yeah, if you lose her, you lose her, right? But like, you'd rather have somebody good than wish they were good, right?
Yeah.
Or than all that. So you go through, and I mean, I think this is a great. Now, this takes leadership. This is the thing.
For sure.
You have to be a very confident owner. You have to direct them. If she said, I want to do yoga for pelvic floor pain in my golf clinic, I'd be like, okay, no. Like that's not our vertical, right? That's not what we do. You
I
have
think
to be comfortable doing
I
that.
would say this though, like like incontinence in golfers, or like, there's a way to
That's
then
what I
do it.
mean. Like it would have to
Yeah,
be something driven back towards. She would have to say, okay, I've had 10 patients in the past year that I could have given this service to.
yeah,
Cool. That's proof of concept. Let's now go throw some marketing money at it. And
yeah,
by money, I mean your time and a little bit of ads, right? And then let's see
totally.
what happens, right?
We
And
create
make
content
them a
around it, right?
business partner.
Because that's the thing. The other 50%, right? If I'm saying I'm gonna bring in a social media guy to do golf stuff with you, right? And blah blah, all that stuff. Like we're going to create we're going to create all these different things where essentially by doing these said things, we allow you to actually, again, create a business within our business. So now you're making 110, 120,
Hmm.
something like
Yep.
that. And again, you're now creating what's entrepreneurship. I just think this to me is a massive upside for physical therapists. And you
Uh-huh.
take zero risk. You don't have to sign a 10-year lease. You
Yeah.
don't have to do any of that stuff. To me, if I was to, I don't want to say do it over again because I love what I'm doing now and everything we're building,
Yeah.
but that'd
Yeah.
be a
Why not?
lot. If PDs just want to make more money and do the things they want to do, that would make you so much more money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That would be great. So I just think in general, and you would treat the patients you love to treat, right? So
Yeah.
I think in general, that's the opportunity for a lot of therapists, and not for a ton more work, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We have Roganized this podcast where the first half was about what we started, and then
yeah, yeah.
we're going off. I love it.
Well,
But
well, I think it's a different
that's what
metric of a
podcasts
way.
are for, though,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I think it's a different metric and a different way to look at the tactical side of that because I think we've also talked about entrepreneurship and like I got somebody who's taking a pelvic health course this weekend, and one of the first things that I would say to her is like she's like, "What? How can I utilize this and what can I do for it?" And if I was like these things, I know that she'd be like, "I'm down. Let's do it." And just to start, and then
Yeah.
and then again, like there's a great place to start. And listen, you got proof of concept where now this thing's cooking. I'd be like, "All
Yeah.
right, how can we keep going? What else do you want to do?"
Yeah.
And someone asked me, they go, "Well, then can I make it into my 40-hour treatment?" It's like, yeah, probably,
Yeah.
but not before you start the proof of concept on this other stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, how do you get this ball rolling? And that to me is the key. So
Yeah.
anyway, I know we moved around a little bit on some of the tactical stuff, but I think this was a very good podcast for all things
Yeah. Well, and that's it. But
entrepreneurship and
these are
benchmarks.
the brain
How to
rabbit
scale.
holes you have to go down when you're at that point. When you say,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'm busy. I'm awesome, but I also don't want to be working 60 hours
Yeah,
an
and
hour."
the
Right?
jumps become if you want to get to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million as you go,
Yep.
I think it becomes sort of non-negotiable by the way that you got to take insurance. I do believe that. I
Yeah.
like yeah,
Very few cash practices have more than like a
yes.
handful of PTs.
I will say that people will say, "Well, I'm a cash-based practice." That's over that. The first thing I would say to them is, "Where are you located?"
And how many
Because if it's in,
1099s do you have, and what's your
yeah,
actual
I,
FTEs?
yeah, because well, not even the FTs. Owen, what I would say is, you're probably in a West Palm Beach, a New York City, a Los Angeles. You're probably in very wealthy, high net worth areas, and
Yeah,
that just my take. That being said, that's also a business that's disruptable because guess what? I'm coming for you in those areas, right? So
yeah,
you've got to think about that and that concept and that vertical is it's just a disruptible business. So anyway, if people want help scaling past that, like I know that's a lot of what we do, but I think that's a big key of it. So
yeah. All right, check us out,
cool.
www.physio-growth.com. We run a mentorship group once a week, sometimes twice a week, every other week, depending on our schedule, where
Yep.
you can shoot questions live at us, or you can enter them in the chat, and we will answer them either live or we'll get back to you if you can't make the call. So it's $100 a month, not a week, a month, because we realize, just like we just spent 40 minutes talking about, or 50, or however long this going. Um, Usually you don't have a crap ton of cash to spend on a coaching program and you don't have a crap ton of time to go on to useless calls. So bounce it off of people who've done it. We're one of the few people out here who've actually built, you know, big clinics, multi-location clinics. So join us.
Love it.
All right, man. We
Cool.
are out.
Later, dude.